All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Wellness Wednesday webinar. Let me get my windows open real quick. We're going to have a really nice discussion tonight about probiotics. So I want to get the chat room open like we do on these webinars every week. They're open to anybody to join, and we keep the chat room open. I've got it up on a separate monitor here so we can I can keep one eye on it, and you can put your questions in there as we're going through, and I'll periodically stop and answer whatever questions are in there. I really appreciate you guys joining me tonight because tonight we're going to talk about, um, right here, my PowerPoint. We're going to talk about probiotics. So hopefully, there we go. You can see that right now. I'm going to move one thing over. And uh, thanks a lot for joining me tonight. So, mental fitness with Doc Talbot. In these webinars, right? We always talk about some aspect of mental fitness. Sometimes we might talk about stress. Sometimes we might talk about serotonin. Sometimes we might talk about dopamine. Sometimes we talk about the gut-brain axis. Sometimes we talk about the microbiome. We're going to talk a lot about the microbiome tonight because we're focusing tonight on probiotics. But all of it comes back to this idea that you see at the bottom of the screen, which is getting people to go from tired and wired, feeling kind of exhausted during the day, and then having trouble winding down at night and relaxing and de-stressing and getting a good night's sleep and things like that. Taking people from that state to a state that I refer to as resilient and ready, right? That you're able to handle stress, that you have good focus and good energy levels and good mood, and you can just, be resilient, meaning no matter what the day serves up to you, you're able to handle it and solve problems and come up with good creative solutions and things like that. So those are the kinds of things that we talk about. So tonight we're going to start off with the first session in a four-part masterclass. And this masterclass is going to be about this: beneficial biotics or BS. We're going to talk about all the different biotics, a buyer's guide to probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, and phytobiotics. And tonight, we're going to focus on the probiotic piece of it: probiotics decoded, choosing the right bugs for the right job. And if you just want to have a little sneak preview on what we're going to talk about in the next one's going to be about prebiotics, which are the foods that feed the bacteria in the gut. So prebiotics that actually change outcomes. Then we're going to talk about postbiotics, beyond the live bacteria. Postbiotics are either dead bacteria or they're the things that bacteria produce. Now, we'll talk a little bit about metabolites tonight because we're going to talk about specific probiotic strains. And then we're going to wrap it up with a term that I coined about 10 years ago called phytobiotics. And this is the idea that different plant extracts can change your microbiome and have signaling qualities across the gut-brain axis. So phytobiotics, plants that talk to your microbiome and your brain and lots of other parts of your body as well. So that's what the next 4 weeks looks like. So if this is the first time that you're joining us, and I share this slide in all my master classes just so people know who I am and importantly, like what my perspective is, right? So I'm trained in nutritional biochemistry. That's what my PhD is in. The kind of work that I do these days is sometimes called nutritional psychology. Sometimes people call me a psychonutritionist because I'm looking at not just the food and how it changes your mental fitness, right? Your mood and your energy and your focus and your resilience and all that kind of stuff that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. But how do specific nutrients change the signals that determine your mood? How do those nutrients change your neurotransmitters or your cytokines or your hormones or et cetera, right? So that's my perspective. When I will, at the end of this, I'll recommend, all right, based on all this science that we just talked about for the last hour, here's what you need to do, right? You need to eat this and avoid that and eat this and do this. It all comes back to the biochemistry, right? So we're trying to go as root cause as we possibly can. So that's why a lot of times on these webinars, we're talking about cortisol, and we're talking about estrogen or testosterone or whatever. I want you to understand that the biochemistry is at the root of driving behavior. So if you feel a particular way, if you're performing at a particular level, there's a biochemical reason for that. And the reason that that's important is that the more we can understand that underlying biochemistry, the more that we can go in and we can actually directly manipulate that biochemistry and modulate that biochemistry and balance these signals that are going across your gut-brain axis. Because, to be honest with you, we don't care about the biochemistry. We don't care about your cortisol. We don't care about your inflammatory cytokines, except for if we understand that, it gives us tools to modulate better. What we care about is how you feel and how you perform at the end of the day. Okay, so that's sort of my perspective of why I share things the way that I do. If you like this kind of stuff, you can find more of my presentations all over the internet. Right here, doctalbot.com. You can find lots of the educational programs that we do. Here through ibsbnb.com, you can find the experiences, the retreats that we do. And then here at threewaveswellness.com, you can find our affiliate program. You can find some of the products that I've launched, and you can sort of dig in at whatever level you're comfortable. Okay, so lots and lots of things out there. So the last bunch of calls that we've done, we've covered a lot of ground with these Wednesday webinars. And you can see the list of them here. I'm not going to read through all of them. But the last ones that we did, the last 3 sessions were about different life stages. Those have just been posted up to YouTube, so you can go to my YouTube channel. It's great if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, because then whenever I post a new video, you'll get a notification that there's something new up there. So those 3 life stages where we talked about pregnancy and postpartum depression and losing the baby weight and things like that. We talked about menopause, perimenopause, andropause, and andropause being sort of like the male version of menopause. And we talked about the aging process. And in all of those stages of life, pregnancy, menopause, and aging, the microbiome is involved. Your gut-brain axis is involved. And so we can improve all those stages of life, and help you feel good while you're getting the health benefits. So you can see those, excuse me, posted up at my YouTube channel. If you want to be informed of what all the different topics are and get reminders, you can go sign up here at doctalbot.com/wellness Wednesday. And then what you'll get is, when we put a new topic up, you'll get an email that says, hey, this is what the topic is this week. And then you'll get a little reminder half an hour before we go live. So you can just click on the Zoom link and you can do that. We've got a really nice mental fitness quiz that you can take. It's based on some of the top scientifically validated psychological surveys out there. It only takes about 5 minutes, and then you can get a nice perspective of like what your mental fitness is now, and then you can see where you're strong, see where you're weak, and then you can focus on your weak spots, and then come back and take it again a month later, and see how you've improved. And then this ebook right here that you can see, Ancient Remedies for Modern Performance. This is a free ebook. This is something that talks about nootropics, which are brain boosters, adaptogens, which are herbs that help you adapt to stress better, and psychobiotics. We're going to talk about some of the psychobiotics tonight, because there are probiotics that specifically can help change your psychological mood state. So there's some probiotics that help lower your stress. There's some probiotics that help to improve your mood. There's some probiotics that help with your mental focus. Because they're biotics that help with your psychology, they're sometimes called psychobiotics. So this ebook talks about that, all of that, and you can get it for free if you go here, doctalbot.com/level up. And I think it's a really nice resource, and it's probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 pages long. It's not like one of those fake ebooks that you see out, online trying to get your emails and things like that. It's actually a really good resource. Okay, so before we get into like the probiotics category, I want you to say something real quick about like so you heard my perspective as a biochemist, but all of that is geared towards this idea of what my company is all about. Three Waves Wellness is all about being the holistic mental wellness company, mental fitness company. And so what we're doing there is we are trying to help you improve how you feel, how you perform on every level imaginable, right? So some people look at this and they think it's for athletes. Well, yes, it's for athletes. Some people look at this and they think, oh, it's for people who are stressed out. Yes, it's for people who are stressed out. Some people look at this and they think, oh, it's for people who want to, come to a new level of performance. Yes, it's for all of that, depending on, how much you want to dive into it. And we do it a few different ways. One way that we do it is we've set up a mental fitness retreat. In fact, it was the world's first mental fitness retreat. I'm talking to you from there right now in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We have certified through the educational programs that we do. We've certified over 1,000 mental wellness coaches all around the world. And we've launched at this point three science-based nutraceutical products. We have a really, really nice affiliate program too, if you're into that kind of thing. So we have a lot of coaches that have a coaching business around helping people feel their best, and some percentage of those coaches are also affiliates, and they represent our products and lots of other products too to their clients, so that their clients are getting good quality research proven products. So you can learn about all that kind of stuff at Three Waves Wellness. Okay, so let's dive into probiotics. This is one of my favorite categories to talk about, and it's one of the biggest categories that's out there. So if you look at the probiotics market globally, it's expected to be about $75 billion by 2030. It's growing very rapidly, so it's a big category now. It's growing almost 10% every single year. I go to a lot of these natural product shows. We're seeing like lots of fiber products these days. We're seeing lots of protein products. The one I was just at was kind of a sports and active nutrition conference. There was a lot of creatine, kind of things there. But across all of that, probiotics has a big presence, if you will, right? You're starting to see, in the grocery stores, you're starting to see cereals say with probiotics and energy bars with probiotics, right? So, when it starts to get into the mainstream grocery store aisle that it's a big category. But a lot of the probiotics that you see out there are just garbage. I'll just say it as sort of plainly as possible. We're going to get into by the end of this masterclass, you're going to know how to identify a good probiotic product. You're going to know how to choose the right one for you. You're going to know what to look for in terms of CFUs, which is like the strength of the probiotic. You're going to know, should it be refrigerated? Does it survive your stomach acid? Like all that kind of stuff. Because right now, for a lot of people, this is what you encounter, right? You go into the, Whole Foods or your local grocery store, and you go to the probiotic section, and you just stand there and you go, oh my gosh. Like, like where do I start? I used to tease people, like when I used to do, like in-person, presentations. A lot of that went away after the pandemic, right? But pre-pandemic, I would ask people in the audience. I would say, "How many people take a probiotic?" And a lot of people would raise their hand, and I would pick on people a little bit in sort of a funny way. I'd go, "Well, if you don't mind, could you tell me, what probiotic are you taking?" And the people would be like, I don't know. The one my girlfriend recommended to me. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, do you know what it does? Like, is it for your constipation? Is it for your diarrhea? Is it for your immune system? Is it because you felt bloated or gassy or something?" And they're like, I don't know exactly. Well, can you tell me why you started taking it? Um, I don't know. I guess I've heard that probiotics were good for me, so I probably should do that. And every once in a while you'd get someone who would, go, "Well, I got it because it was the one that was on sale." And like that, like none of those, what I just mentioned, none of those are good reasons for choosing your probiotic. And we're going to talk about why, and we're going to, give you some check marks of how to pick them, how to pick the right one. But it's confusing, right? That's the sort of moral of the story here. Okay, so we're gonna like decode all of that for you tonight. So before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about what probiotics actually are. So this masterclass is going to be about all the different kinds of biotics. Probiotics, I'm going to give you on the next slide, I'm going to give you the actual formal definition of a probiotic. But the thing you really need to remember is that a probiotic is a live bacteria. Um, if it's not alive, it can't be called a probiotic. If it's a dead bacteria, it's most likely called a postbiotic. And you might be asking yourselves immediately, well, wait a minute. I get that a live bacteria could have a benefit if I eat it and it gets to my gut and it actually survives. That's pretty logical. But if I eat a dead bacteria, how is a dead bacteria going to have any benefit at all? Trust me, it does have a benefit. It has certain benefits. In some cases, some of those benefits of postbiotics are even better than the live bacteria version of that exact same strain. We'll talk about that when we get to the deep dive about postbiotics. But probiotics have to be alive to be considered probiotics. There's another category of biotics called prebiotics. Now, these are the food for the bacteria. We'll talk about these in episode 2 that we'll talk about next week. These are usually fibers, not always fibers. Sometimes they're flavonoids, sometimes they're other kinds of plant compounds. Those plant compounds, though, if they're not a prebiotic effect, meaning they're helping to nourish or helping to grow the probiotics, sometimes we'll call those phytobiotics because phyto means plant. So like a phytonutrient is a nutrient from a plant, like a flavonoid or a carotenoid or a lignin or something like that. And then when we start to combine these biotics, a lot of companies will call them symbiotics for synergistic biotic. And those are almost always combinations of probiotics and prebiotics. And you're starting to see, more of those symbiotics be probiotic, prebiotic, postbiotic. I'm not aware of any product that combines all four of those, except for my product that we launched a few months ago. It actually, became a product of the year for 2026 just a short while ago. So I'll give a couple mentions about that as we go through here. But those are the different kinds of biotics. They all have their own sets of benefits. So sometimes what you're looking for is a probiotic. Sometimes what you're looking for is a postbiotic, and et cetera, et cetera. Tonight we're going to focus on the probiotic piece of it. Okay. Oh, so this piece too, right down here. When you're choosing these, you have to think about the benefit. That's going to be on the very last slide. The first thing that you have to think of when you're choosing any of these biotics is, what am I trying to get out of it? Like, what's my reason for taking this biotic? Am I taking this to help like a gut issue, like bloating or gas or indigestion or heartburn, or am I taking one for constipation or one for diarrhea? Right? Those are opposite effects. Am I taking a psychobiotic so I can take this biotic and it's going to help me make more serotonin so I'll be happier in my brain, or more dopamine so that I'm more motivated in my brain? You have to think about that first. So the benefit piece of it. But what is the onset of action? Sometimes these things can work in hours. Like, you can take one of these biotics and within 1 hour you can feel de-stressed, or you can feel mentally more clear, or you can feel more energetic. But some of the effects will take days or weeks or months, depending on what aspect, what health benefit you're looking for. So that's a consideration when you're making your choices. Okay. And some of that is due to what you're choosing. Some of that is due to what you're trying to solve. Sometimes what we're trying to solve, sometimes those can be solved very, very quickly and easily. Sometimes they're things that take a while to kind of manifest. Like if you're trying to change your whole gut barrier function, right? You're trying to solve your leaky gut. That's something that you can't rebuild all that tissue in a day, but you might be able to do it in a month. Okay, so the sort of onset of action is an important consideration. Okay, but we're going to talk about all that as we go. So this is the formal definition of what a probiotic is. There's also a formal definition of prebiotics. There's also a formal definition of postbiotics. But probiotics are live microorganisms so we talked about that piece already. The other part of it is that which, when administered in adequate amounts, confer a health benefit on the host. And us is the host, right? You are the host if you're the one taking this. So it's not enough for the bacteria just to be alive. It has to have been studied in a human clinical trial and shown that this certain amount of it, 1 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion, 50 billion of the organisms, delivered some sort of a documented health benefit. So not every bacteria that's out there is truly a probiotic because maybe it's not alive, so we can't do that. And maybe it hasn't been studied the right way. Maybe it hasn't, been shown to have an effect. Maybe the probiotic that you're taking has been shown to have an effect, but it's been shown to have an effect at 10 billion CFUs is one of the ways we measure the strength, colony forming units. So if it's been shown in a clinical trial at 10 billion to have an effect, but now it's in your product at 1 billion because that's cheaper for the company to put in instead of 10 billion, now it's really not a probiotic because now it's at subpotency. It's not going to probably deliver the benefit at 1/10 the dose. So that's a really important consideration too that we're gonna go through as we get through this. Um, Let me talk real quick before we talk about the actual bacteria about fermented foods. Now, fermented foods are one of my favorite foods to recommend. I recommend, people ask me all the time, what's the one thing that I can do to improve my microbiome? And I'll say, well, it's not one thing, it's three things. One is to eat more fiber, one is to eat more fermented foods, and one is to eat more flavonoids, right? They all just happen to start with F. So it's my three Fs: fiber, fermented foods, flavonoids. Um, so I love fermented foods, but fermented foods are not a great way to get your probiotics. And that is like a revelation to a lot of people, right? A lot of us think and have grown up thinking that fermented foods are a great source of probiotic bacteria. But think about the definition, right? Most of these bacteria in the fermented foods haven't been documented in clinical trials to confer a host benefit. The bacteria themselves, the food itself is actually wonderful for that, and there are great studies showing that if you eat more fermented foods, you get a range of health benefits. You have a better mood, your cognition, your ability to think is better, your longevity is probably better. Your inflammation is lower. There's just so you have less leaky gut. There's your immune system is stronger. There's so many benefits of eating more fermented foods like kefir and yogurt, kombucha, tempeh or miso, which are fermented soy products, kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles are different kinds of fermented vegetables, and then fermented drinks, right? Everybody's happy when they see this bullet point on the slides: wine, beer, and cider. That counts, okay? And the reason that fermented foods is so good for you and is not really because of the bacteria. It's because of the collection, the gamish of stuff that you get during the fermentation process. And so what you see here is that once you ferment something, there's all kinds of stuff there. And that stuff is fermentation associated bacteria, fermentation associated fungi, yeasts and things like that. There is bacteria there. But what's really helping is this: oligosaccharides, which are kind of prebiotic fiber, polyphenols, different enzymes, fatty acids, organic acids, short chain fatty acids. The reason that fermented foods have the distinctive kind of like acidic sour taste that's there is because of all of these different metabolites. And it's that helps to set up the environment of your gut. And that environment is now going to be just slightly acidic. And that's important because that's the environment that your good bacteria like to live in. That environment is pro-growth for good bacteria and is anti-growth for bad bacteria. So just having a little bit of fermented foods, a couple times a day, or a lot of people who are watching this are probably living in the United States where fermented foods are not quite as popular as they are in Asia and Europe. If we would just eat more fermented foods, we would actually change the environment of our gut, and that would make it more hospitable to our good guys and less hospitable to the bad guys. So I'll come back to this when we talk about postbiotics, because these metabolites can also be considered postbiotics. And that's important because we can actually use those as dietary supplements. We can supplement people with polyphenols or oligosaccharides or short chain fatty acids to help to change the environment and, in a sense, protect the probiotics that we're trying to deliver to the gut. Which, and the probiotics are what we're really focusing on tonight. So let me move on. Okay, so um, if you haven't heard this story before of the microbiome and the fact that what happens in your gut doesn't stay in your gut, it affects every aspect of your body. It sometimes sound a little science fictiony, right? That the bacteria in your gut can affect how you think and how you feel in your brain and can affect your longevity and can affect your aging process and can affect your hormones, like in a postmenopausal woman, for example, and can affect your immune system and could be the difference. Your gut bacteria could be the difference of do you get infected with COVID or not? Like, honestly. So I have this graph here to show you that, the ones down here make sense that your bacteria affects your gut health, right? So your bacteria levels can influence your risk of colon cancer, your risk of ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, all that kind of stuff. That makes sense, right? Gut bacteria, gut health. But look at some of these other things: rheumatoid arthritis, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, obesity, diabetes, depression, anxiety. It's affecting metabolic conditions. It's affecting psychological conditions. It's affecting cognitive conditions. And there's really, really good research around all of these. And because of this scientific linkage between what your microbiome is doing, where your bacteria live, and really every aspect of your health, you end up seeing health claims for probiotics that look like they're everything under the sun, right? Health benefits of probiotics, digestive benefits, that makes perfect sense. Allergies, insulin resistance, which is like an anti-diabetes effect, antioxidant benefits, anti-obesity benefits, improves lipid metabolism, so cholesterol levels and things like that, stimulates the immune system. The list goes on and on and on. And it kind of makes probiotics sound like a panacea, right? Oh, just, I'll go get some probiotics and I'll just be healthier in all these different ways. Not so quick, because not all probiotics deliver all these benefits. Probiotics in general deliver all these benefits, and there are thousands and thousands of studies to document all of that. But in order to get an anti-obesity benefit, for example, that's a different probiotic strain than one that's going to stimulate your immune system. And that's a different probiotic strain than one that's going to help your digestion. So it's very similar to the idea of vitamins. So, you wouldn't ever just go to the store and say like, "Hey, do you have any vitamins? Just give me some vitamins." Well, are you looking for vitamins like vitamin D, or are you looking for vitamin B? Vitamin B is, B complex are involved in energy metabolism. Vitamin D is involved in calcium absorption. Are you looking for vitamin E, which is a very good antioxidant, or vitamin C? It's a different kind of antioxidant. Like, all those vitamins and minerals have different effects in the body, and that's why we need a collection of them. Okay, probiotics are the same way. They're very, very different in what they deliver in terms of their overall benefit. So that'll be if there's one thing that you take away from this, it's that if you're going to choose a probiotic to start supplementing with, you have to pick the right probiotic that's delivering the right benefit, right? And I'm going to tell you what those are by the time we get to the end, okay? So, and let me see. So somebody put it in the chat. They're like, "I want that one." When I was talking about the anti-obesity probiotics, I want that one. LOL, the weight loss one. Yeah, we all want that one, exactly. So, but we can talk about that when we get down to the section where we're talking about probiotic strains. So here's another graph showing. What does the microbiome do? So all these different things. So modulates the central nervous system, right? That's your brain, basically. short chain fatty acid production when we eat fibers. Short chain fatty acids, which we'll talk about next week when we talk about prebiotics, are nearly miraculous in what they do. So if you get a probiotic strain that makes more short chain fatty acids, those short chain fatty acids are going to help you with your blood sugar control, is going to help you with your insulin sensitivity, is because it's helping with your blood sugar control, it's going to help you burn more fat, it's going to help with your cortisol levels, it's going to help you shrink your belly fat levels, especially if you're on a good prudent diet and exercise regimen. So we'll talk about that one in a little bit. They're involved in fat storage. They're involved in blood flow. They're involved in the immune system. A lot of the signals that we talk about when I talk about the gut brain axis, a big part of that axis that helps you send the signals between your two brains, your gut brain and your head brain, a lot of those signals go through your immune system. I was just talking about vitamins, but if you have a good functioning microbiome, you're making a lot of vitamins in your microbiome and you're just absorbing them from there. And you don't have to take a multivitamin because of that. They protect against different pathogens, partly because they're helping with your immune system vigilance. So the microbiome is doing a lot. I wanted to put this graph on here, this little cartoon, because it shows a lot, and it shows a couple of things. So on the left-hand side, it's showing where your microbiome lives. So we have a microbiome. Basically everywhere. There's a microbiome that lives on our skin. There's a microbiome that lives in our nose. There's a microbiome that lives in our mouth, like our oral microbiome is a different microbiome than the one in our stomach. And you can see that, there's some in the stomach, not a lot. There's some in the upper part of the small intestine, the duodenum, a little bit more. There's a little bit more in the lower part of the small intestine, the middle part and the lower part, what we call the jejunum and the ileum. But the vast majority of your bacteria live in your colon, your large intestine, sometimes called the distal or the far away part of your intestine. This is where 99% of your bacteria live. And this is important that this is where they need to live. Remember I said about fermented foods? Fermented foods help to keep the colon in that slightly acidic state so your good bacteria like to live there. If you start to lose that environment, if your environment becomes, the wrong environment, some of these bacteria can start to creep up into the upper part of your small intestine, and that leads to a problem called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And then you start to get a lot of bad bacteria growing up here where you don't really want them. That can lead to inflammation, it can lead to immune system problems, it can lead to a whole host of things. So you want to keep them down here in your colon. So the reason this is important is that we want to make sure that the probiotics that we choose actually make it through all of this. It makes it through the oral microbiome. It makes it through your stomach acid, which is actually designed to kill bacteria, right? If you ate a contaminated piece of food, you would want your stomach to kill all those nasty bacteria, those pathogenic bacteria, before they got further down into your body. So your stomach is actually designed to kill bacteria. So lots of bacteria get killed right here. And if you're supplementing with a probiotic that you want to end up way down here, that's not going to work, right? So we have to either choose strains that are resistant to stomach acid, or if they're strains that are susceptible to damage by stomach acid, we have to protect them in a certain way. We'll put them in an acid-resistant capsule or a time-release capsule or something like that, so that they can pass through here and then they release themselves down here. Okay, so that's where the bacteria live. Once they're there, what are they doing? Right? They're producing lots of stuff. We just saw that in the last couple of slides. But they're also sending, not just producing stuff, but sending those signals from the gut to every part of your entire body. So, I talk a lot about the gut-brain axis. That's involved in things like stress and anxiety and depression, etc. But there's a gut-brain endocrine axis. I talked about this in the menopause masterclass that we did a couple of weeks ago. There's a gut-heart axis that is related to cardiovascular diseases and actually related to athletic performance. And you can go down the whole list: gut-lung axis, gut-liver axis, blah, 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 all these different ones. What happens in the gut influences every single aspect of human health. And so that's one of the reasons when I'm talking about health and performance and longevity and all that kind of stuff, I come back to the gut so often that people think like, oh, you're a gut scientist, you're a gastroenterologist or something like that. And I'm not. All right? I told you what my training is, right? Nutritional biochemistry, psychonutrition, nutritional psychology, all that kind of stuff. It like coming back to the gut is just going to the root cause of what is sending these signals, sending these biochemical signaling molecules. And if we can go back to the gut and we can modulate them, then we can send out better signals than we're being sent in the first place. Okay. Sometimes I talk about the microbiome in the terms of it is an internal pharmacy that is making all the signaling molecules that we need, and all we need to do is fine tune that. The other part of that is that it's very dynamic, meaning, and it's very modulatable, if that's a word. We can change what's happening at the level of the microbiome in in very short, in a couple of days. So that's great that we can go in there, we can understand the signals, we can go in there, we can change the signals, and as a result of that, we can improve all the things that you see on the right side of this cartoon. And then Sophia just put in, can we go back and listen to prior Zooms like the one for menopause? Yeah. In fact, the life stages one is up on YouTube right now. And it's also in a playlist. So you can watch the one on pregnancy, which is number one. You can watch the one on menopause, which is number two. You can watch the one on successful aging, which is number three. You don't have to watch them in order. You can watch them at however, whatever, whatever cadence you want to. Okay. So, and then this speaks to the idea that like this is one of the reasons that I focus as a psychonutritionist, I focus on the gut first, right? We call it the second brain, but in a lot of cases it's really like the first brain because this is where a lot of the signals originate. Your gut is making 90% of your serotonin, and because of that, it's very much involved in your level of happiness or sadness. It's making 70% of your dopamine, so it's very involved in are you motivated or are you fatigued? So you get the idea. We can focus on what's happening in your gut. One of the ways is with psychobiotics to change the signaling across your axis to change what your brain is doing, how your brain is performing. Okay. This is I share this in a lot of my seminars when I'm talking about this kind of a topic. This is an article that came out in the end of 2020. So this is right when the pandemic was still in pretty high running, around the world. And this was talking. This is in the Wall Street Journal, and it's talking, which is a not a scientific journal, right? Wall Street Journal is a business financial newspaper, and they're writing this article that was called. The title of it was "Feeling Depressed? Bacteria in Your Gut May Be to Blame." New studies point to the trillions of organisms in the human microbiome is playing an unexpectedly huge role in our well-being. And I usually ask my students, why do you think the world's, leading financial newspaper, business newspaper, is writing about your gut bacteria? That doesn't make any sense at all, except that the science is now telling us that the gut bacteria is related to how you feel. It's related to burnout, which is a big problem in a lot of corporations. It's related to productivity. It's related to everything. So if you're a business person and you're reading this article, you might read this and go, "Oh, this is going to be important for my employees. It's going to be important for my human resources. It's going to be important for my wellness program. It's going to be important for the bottom line of my company." And then here are I just pulled out some of the interesting points from the article. I'm not going to read through all of these, just the interest of time. But if you want to go back and look at the replay, you can pause it right here and you can read through all of these. But it's just showing us that your gut, what's happening in your gut, has a lot more to do than just with your gut health, right? So when people say gut health, my ears perk up because it's like it's whole body health. When we're talking about gut health, we're talking about every aspect of human health. So, how do we know this? How do we know that what's happening with your gut bacteria is driving these issues, right? Driving your mood, driving your metabolism, driving the aging process. How do we know that? How do we know that it's that direction versus you could say, well, if you're aging in a in an unhealthy way, maybe it's because you're not physically active, maybe it's because you're eating yucky food, maybe it's because you're smoking and drinking and partying all the time, and maybe that is causing you to age faster, and it's causing a problem with your microbiome too, right? That also makes sense, right? It could be like a reverse causation sort of a thing. Well, we know that it's the microbiome causing these changes in health, ill health or good health, because of studies like this, where scientists have done what are called fecal microbiome transplants. FMTs. And what you basically do on these, I'm going to give you sort of the simplified version. You can take the microbiome from one mouse and put it into another mouse and see what happens. So in this example, they're taking the microbiome from an obese mouse and they're putting that microbiome into a lean mouse. And then they follow the mice for a long time, and they see, well, not a long time. Mice live pretty quickly, so you can follow them and you can see what happens. And what happens is that lean mouse that has just received this obese microbiome from an obese mouse, that lean mouse becomes obese. And they don't just it doesn't just change their metabolism. So their metabolism changes. So their lipid metabolism changes. They're not burning fat as efficiently as they were before. They're not burning carbohydrates as efficiently as they were before. They're much likely to store calories versus burn those calories off, right? So their blood sugar changes, their insulin sensitivity changes, they become diabetic, all that kind of stuff. But they also develop the behaviors of the obese mouse. They sit around more. They don't get on the wheel and run around the wheel, so they become more sedentary, more lazy. They want to eat more, so they eat more, but they also have this what's called appetitive drive. So their appetite is driving everything that they do. They're searching for food. They're stealing food from their litter mates and hiding it for later. So they take on the behavior of an obese mouse, right? They're basically thinking about food all the time and doing everything they can do to get some food. And so that's no good, right? The people ask me all the time, can it go back the other way? Can you take the microbiome from a lean mouse and put it into an obese mouse? And what happens? Well, the obese mouse becomes lean. And everybody now they're like, how can I get that? Right? Never mind the probiotic that Sophia wants. How can I get the lean microbiome? And that's just done, right? Now I'm going to be a lean person. Well, you have to keep feeding it, right? You have to stay physically active. You have to eat a low calorie diet. You have to eat the right kinds of prebiotics to nourish those good bacteria. If you don't, the obese microbiome starts to take over again, and you go back the direction you were looking for. I guarantee you, someday this will be a treatment for obesity. Right now, the leading treatment for obesity are these GLP-1 drugs, right? Ozempics and Mounjaros and that style drug. And those are great for people who need that. Someday, this is going to be something that you're going to be able to go into and go, okay, switch out my microbiome, and I want the lean microbiome. Like that will be a treatment someday. But it works for lots of things besides just metabolic conditions. They've done microbiome transplants like this for rodent models of autism, rodent models of Parkinson's disease, rodent models of a whole bunch of different things, even rodent models of psychological issues like depression. So here's one where you're looking at behavior. This is an introverted mouse. You can take the introverted mouse and put his microbiome into an extroverted mouse. And how do you know a mouse is an extrovert or an introvert? An introverted mouse is one that's going to be a little more timid. They don't want to go exploring. They don't want to go in the maze. They don't want to get on the wheel. They don't want to, play with their litter mates. They want to sort of keep to themselves, right? Extroverts like to do all those other things. So you take the introvert microbiome, put it into an extrovert. The extrovert becomes an introvert. And yes, it can go back the other way too. And so people will look at these studies and they go, well, come on. This is mice, right? Humans are different, right? We're way more complicated than mice. Like these studies have also been done in in rats. They've been done in fish. They've been done in different kinds of worms, nematodes, and things like that. They've been done in fruit flies. And then people will go, well, humans. Humans are way more complex. This is different. The bacteria aren't telling me what to do, and yet we can do this in humans, or we can do it related with humans. So in these studies, what is done is you take the microbiome from a human and put it into a mouse and see what happens to the mouse. And in this case, I won't go through all the nuances of what all these colors look like, but basically what they're doing is they're taking the microbiome from depressed humans, and they're taking that microbiome and putting it into a non-depressed mouse, and the mouse develops what are called, right here it says, depressive-like behaviors. You can't ask a mouse if it's happy or sad. You can just observe how it behaves. And a depressed mouse will, they'll go in the corner. They won't play with their litter mates. They won't, they won't be playful. They won't do the happy things that normal mice do, right? So it looks like it's depressed. That's why we say depressive like. And so that tells us that the microbiome from a depressed human is inducing depression in that formerly non-depressed animal. Okay, so like this is, and then, there's lots and lots of studies to show that people with depression have a different microbiome than people without depression. There are studies to show that if you take people with depression and put them on a Mediterranean diet that has lots of fiber and lots of phytonutrients and lots of good protein and good fatty acids and, really looks nice, and they're not eating a standard American diet that's high in processed foods and high in sugar and things like that, the depressed people who got the Mediterranean diet, their microbiome changes into the, more good bacteria, less bad bacteria, and their depression goes away. Like it's like that diet is therapeutic in treating their depression. It's really, really miraculous stuff. And a lot of that benefit is coming through what's happening at the level of their microbiome. So the question becomes like, can we do that with different probiotics? Can we choose the right probiotics to change any of the things that we've just talked about? And the answer is yes, because these two brains are constantly communicating with each other across the gut-brain axis. So what happens in the gut is transmitted across this axis to the brain in our head. And so sometimes those are signals that go through the immune system. Sometimes there's signals that go through your circulation. Sometimes there's signals that go directly across your nervous system through things like the vagus nerve. And so this whole idea of two brains and how that influences every aspect of our health. There's a lot of really good books. This book in the middle is my book, Mental Fitness, but there's this one on the left-hand side called The Psychobiotic Revolution, which is a very sciencey book. So if you're a nerd and you want to really get into well, how did they discover this? And they talk about these rodent studies, but they also talk about different strains of bacteria, and this strain being good for depression and this other strain being good for anxiety and etc. This is a really nice book if you want to dive into that. And this other one written by a friend of mine, at Erin Meyer, The Mind-Gut Connection. So he talks there about the whole gut-brain axis and how the immune system is involved, and it's sort of a probably an easier read than the Psychobiotic Revolution, but they're both really good books. And it talks about this kind of stuff, right? What I just mentioned, that some of these signals are changing your stress hormones, your HPA axis. Some of them are changing your immune system response and your inflammatory response. Some of them are directly changing your neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, GABA. Okay, so. And I love this slide. Like any of my students who are on right now, they're rolling their eyes because they've seen this slide 1 billion times. But I like it because what it shows you is how modifiable these signals are, right? So, we're talking tonight about the bacteria, right? The bacteria that are here in your intestinal system. And I'm not gonna spend too much time on this slide, so don't worry. But you can change, first of all, what those bacteria are, right? What I say is who is there. You can change what bacteria live in your gut. You can also change what the bacteria who are living in your gut are doing, right? So there's one aspect of, do you have more lactobacillus? Do you have more bifidobacterium? Do you have more Akkermansia? That's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is, great, but who cares? Are they making more serotonin? Are they making more GABA? Are they making more dopamine? Are they making less of these inflammatory molecules like cytokines? Are they sending signals across your vagus nerve? Or, which is a sort of a de-stressing kind of a signal? Or are you sending signals across the sympathetic parts of your nervous system, which are like an amplification, like a fight or flight response, right? So the bacteria matter, but the metabolites, the things that they're producing, matter also. And then you'll see things on here like short chain fatty acids, which we'll talk about next week, immune system signals, and the whole idea of this is that we can modulate it. We can modulate it with choosing good foods. We can modulate it in the wrong direction by choosing bad foods. We can modulate it by choosing the right kinds of bacteria or the right kinds of fibers or the right kinds of plant extracts. And eventually, like what happens in the gut down here, eventually percolates all the way up to your brain, or your adrenal glands or your liver or your, any of the tissues that I showed you on one of the early slides. So what happens in the gut, percolates out into the rest of the body, and we can change that. It is exquisitely modifiable. Okay. So that's the promise, I guess, of what probiotics could do. But when you go to actually choose a product, you have to ask yourself, okay, why am I picking up this product? What strain is in this product? And you can look on the side of a bottle like this and you can go, oh, this one actually lists the strains. I'll show you what that looks like in one, two, three, four slides. Um, if you get a product that just says Lactobacillus acidophilus and doesn't tell you anything else, you need to put it down. Or Bifidobacterium bifidum and nothing else, you need to put it down because that doesn't give you enough information. You have to know the strain designation. And once you know it, then you know everything you need to know about that bacteria. You're going to know what the benefit is. You're going to know how many billions I need to take. You're going to know, does this go on the shelf or does it go in the refrigerator? You're going to know what the shelf life is going to be. You're going to know, is it going to survive my stomach acid? Am I going to have to take it on an empty stomach or with food? Like everything percolates down from once you know the strain designation. Okay. So this one in particular, it's probiotics. There's four probiotic strains and one postbiotic strain in that formula. And they're all geared towards either metabolism. The postbiotic strain helps with blood sugar and insulin and belly fat and weight loss and that kind of stuff. But the four postbiotic strains, the four probiotic strains help with mood state. One of them helps with stress, one of them helps with sleep quality, one of them helps with mental focus, et cetera, et cetera. I'll tell you the exact strains in just a little bit, but like that's the insight that you need to have. If you scan this little QR code, you can get on our mailing list and you can get all these sort of mental fitness resources at anytime that you want in your inbox. Okay, but this is where the probiotic world is right now. You look at the side of most products and you'll see things like this. You'll see Lactobacillus acidophilus. You'll see Bifidobacterium longum. You'll see this is a very popular one right now, Bacillus coagulans. I see a lot of this one. Bacillus coagulans is a very, very stable species of bacteria, and so you'll see it in energy bars. You'll see it in ready to eat cereal. You'll see it in like a lot of processed foods that say with probiotics we'll have Bacillus coagulans. I've never used it in any formula that I've done, and I've done dozens of probiotic formulas for different companies. And the reason I don't use it is because it doesn't do a heck of a lot, right? It's okay for your gut health in terms of like constipation, digestion stuff. It's okay for your immune system. But there's much better choices out there than Bacillus coagulans. The reason you see it in so many products is because it's really stable. And a big food company can just go, yeah, we want to say with probiotics. What's a good, cheap, stable one that we can throw in there and just say with probiotics? We don't particularly care what it's doing. We just want to say with probiotics because that's what consumers are looking for. you'll go choose that one, right? But if you're like me, like a scientist, you would want to put something in there that like delivers an actual benefit for your consumers, right? Not just like window dressing on the front of the label. So what you see on this slide right now are all these different probiotics, but you don't. None of them tell you the strain, and the strain is really what's important. Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. Some of the what if you know the strain, like I said just a few minutes ago, you're gonna know things like um, is it going to survive your stomach acid? Is it going to actually arrive alive into the lower part of your digestive tract where you're going to get those benefits? You're going to know, will it interact with antibiotics? People ask me all the time, if I'm taking an antibiotic, should I not take a probiotic or should I take a probiotic? I say that you should take a probiotic. You just have to take them about 2 hours apart from each other so the antibiotic doesn't kill the probiotic before it even gets into your GI tract. We can talk about that later if people have questions. You have to think about external factors, right? Like I said before, is it susceptible to heat? Is it susceptible to moisture? Is it going to survive being delivered to you in a UPS truck? If you order it off of Amazon and you live in Phoenix and it's being delivered in August temperatures where it's 140 degrees in the back of that truck, or is that going to kill the bacteria? All of that are really important considerations. When should you take it? Is it going to be effective for certain benefits and not other ones? So there's a lot of considerations. These are the most important ones. This says disease specificity, but I would prefer this to say health benefit. Okay, so instead of a probiotic treating your disease, even though there are studies out there that show that, I think of it more like, okay, why am I taking it? What benefit am I hoping to get out of this probiotic? Strain specificity, which we're going to start talking about on the next slide. Viability factor, is it going to get to where it needs to get and be able to do its job? And then population factor. Some probiotic strains are for babies, like Bifidobacterium infantis, for example, you might give to a newborn to help them digest breast milk better. Um, and other ones you might give to an elderly person, like an Akkermansia, to help them with their leaky gut, so that we can improve their immune system function and improve their metabolism and help with their inflammation and things like that. So there's a lot of considerations. It's not just going to Amazon and ordering whatever probiotic pops up first when you search on that. So this is what I mean by probiotic strain specificity. This is the most important consideration, besides the benefit, right? What benefit am I looking for? Okay, I want it to do X. Then you can find a strain that does X. Okay, but this is what the strain is. The strain, every single probiotic should have three names: a first name, which is the genus, a middle name, which is the species, and a last name, the most important name, which is the strain designation. And the strain designation is almost always some combination of letters and numbers. And it's based on who discovered it. It's based on what company is marketing it. It's based on the DNA analysis of how they justify that this lactobacillus acidophilus is different than this other lactobacillus acidophilus. There are genetic differences between those bacteria. So the genus is a very, very broad category. All this tells me, lactobacillus, all this tells me is the shape of the bacteria, that it's a bacillus shape, which is a rod shape, and it tells me that it's lacto. It has the ability to produce lactic acid, right? Who cares, right? I mean, those are interesting pieces of information, but it doesn't tell me very, very, very much more. I'm sorry. The lacto tells me that it can eat lactose. The acidophilus tells me that it can make lactic acid, right? That it loves phyllis. It loves acid. And this is one of the reasons we love Lactobacillus acidophilus. This is why it's in our yogurt and it's in a lot of our fermented foods. This is the one that's going to be eating up some of those fibers, those oligosaccharides, and producing a little bit of lactic acid. And that's what we taste. That's that sour taste in a fermented food. But that lactic acid will slightly acidify the gut, and that makes it a good environment for good bacteria to grow. So this is a wonderful thing. This strain is a further subclassification that really tells you the unique properties of that strain. So you could have a Lactobacillus acidophilus X that helps with constipation. You could have an Lactobacillus acidophilus Y that helps with diarrhea, right? Exactly opposite effects in the GI tract just based on their strain designation. Okay. So we're going to go through this a little bit in more detail. Another way I like to describe this is think about strain specificity as if it were dog breeds, right? Would you ever go, these are all the same species of dog. Canine caninus. All dogs are the same species. It's the breed that sets them apart. The breed is kind of like the strain in a probiotic. You would never go into a pet store and say, you know, give me a dog, right? I'm here to get a dog. Do you have any dogs that are on sale? Any dogs that are buy one, get one? Are there any dogs with free shipping? I'll just take that one, right? Because maybe you're looking for whatever this is, a Pomeranian probably. That's very different than this Mastiff up here, and that's very different than this Dalmatian. You get the idea, right? But that's exactly what people are doing when they go into the Whole Foods and they just pull off some probiotic and they go, well, it's got this one has 10 billion, that one has 5 billion, so this 10 billion must be better. So I'm gonna take this one. Or they'll look and they'll go, oh, this one has five of these lactobacillus, this bifidobacterium, this one has five of those, and this one only has two, so I'm gonna get the one with five, right? That's it. Those are not good ways to choose your probiotics. You need to go for the strain designation. So you can look at things like this where all of these are different strains. These are all sort of general health strains of bacteria. Bifidobacterium bifidum BB006. This one produces lactic acid. It's good to outcompete bad bacteria. This one right here, you actually find this in a lot of products, Lactobacillus acidophilus LA14. It's a good, nice balancer between good and bad bacteria. It helps with mineral absorption. This one, Lactobacillus rhamnosus LR32, I've formulated a few products with this. It helps with general motility. So if you're just having like a little bit of like rumbly tummy and you don't know like, am I getting constipated? Am I developing like a diarrhea? Am I a little bit irregular with my bowel habits? This is a nice one. LR32 is a nice one to just sort of reset your normal gut rhythm, so you're having a bowel movement every day kind of a thing, right? But all of these are all a little bit different in how they work. We can also get to these. These are some mainstream like grocery store brands that you're going to see out there. Here's Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG is the strain designation. You'll see this on your shelf as Culturelle. This one is really good for traveler's diarrhea. I recommend this to people all the time because almost every grocery store in America carries it. It's about $20. And if you're having you come back from a trip to the Caribbean and you have a little bit of, traveler's diarrhea, you go get some Culturelle. It'll, fix you up in a couple of days. Here's another one, Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis. This is Activia yogurt, right? So if Culturelle is stopping you from pooping because it's helping you with your diarrhea, Activia is helping you poop because it's this strain is very good for helping you be regular when you're constipated. And then this one that people know as Align, the brand name, is a Bifidobacterium longum, and the strain designation is right here, 35624. This one is really good for your immune system. So like three grocery store brands that are probably all sitting right next to each other in your grocery store, or definitely in your health food store. And you go, well, Culturelle, Activia, Align. Which one should I choose? Not because of which one's on sale, not because of any of the things I talked about before. You choose this one if you have diarrhea. You choose this one if you have constipation. You choose this one if you feel like you're coming down with a cold or a COVID or something like that, right? Completely different effects based mostly on this strain designation. Okay, so far so good. I don't see any more questions in the chat, and let me see how many more slides I've got. I've got not too many more. I want to spend a little bit of time on this. So when I started doing this, and I realized that nobody can probably read this, right? And that's on purpose. when I started doing this, uh, 20 or so years ago, right, really getting into probiotics, I was one of the only one of the only formulation scientists who was like really trying to get down to this level of strain designation. I would argue all the time with ingredient suppliers who were selling probiotics. I would say, I need to know the strain. They would come in and they would say, we have Bifidobacterium longum, and that's going to be good for XYZ. I have Lactobacillus casei. That's going to be good for ABC. And I'd say, well, what's the strain designation? What's the strain designation? What the strain? And I would get pushback all the time. People saying, you don't need to know the strain. You just need to know the genus species. And I was like, no, no, no. This is the emerging science. This is why we need to know the strain. And so that was, a number of years ago. It has really, really changed the last few years. Well, maybe not most, at least half of all the products on the market now will show you strain designation. And once you know the strain designation, you can do a simple Google search and you can type in like Bifidobacterium longum 1714. And you could type that in and say key benefits. And one of the key benefits is going to come up is psychological distress, reduction in distress, and improvement in memory. Um, it's getting a lot better, but there's still, maybe the other half of the products that are on the market do not tell you the strain designation. And if you don't know the strain designation, you don't know what it's going to do for you. You will know sort of generally, oh, this is maybe going to make GABA. This is maybe going to help with diarrhea, or maybe it's going to help with constipation, right? You don't know unless you know exactly the strain designation. And the reason I put this slide up, very tiny type, is to show you that there's more and more and more of these specific strain designated bacteria that are coming to market, right? So that's a good thing for us as consumers. Um, Again, when I first started doing this, there was really only one. When I was looking for a psychobiotic bacteria, there was really only one psychobiotic bacteria out there, and it was called Cerebiome. So Cerebiome was made by a French company called Lallemand. They started studying. So this is a blend of two different bacteria. Um, what is it? I've got them on the other slide. It is this one, Lactobacillus helveticus, and a Bifidobacterium. I think it's a longum. Yeah. So they have been studied those two separately, and in about like oh 2020, I want to say, they launched it as Cerebiome because they had some data to show that if we feed this to people who are depressed, they become less depressed in about 8 weeks, right? So great. They also had some data on anxiety. Same thing. People with generalized anxiety disorder. We feed this combination of two bacteria to people who have that disease, and they become less anxious. So that was great. I started formulating with this, used it in a couple of products. And what does it say here? Cerebiome exerts a positive influence on the gut microbiota of individuals with mild anxiety. So great. You could take someone who was depressed, they could become less depressed. Someone with anxiety disorder, less of those issues, and that was great. Since then, since that time, and 2020 or so, there have been a whole bunch of other strain-specific psychobiotics coming out. So here's one, this Lactobacillus casei shirota. If you've ever seen those tiny little Yakult shots in the refrigerated section of your grocery store, that is the strain that is in those little shots. So whenever I see those, my grocery store doesn't always carry them, but whenever I see them, I get them because they're fun little things. They're like little shots, and they're kind of yummy, and you're getting this specific strain of bacteria that helps with psychological distress. So it can help to sort of de-stress you. I'm not going to go through all of these, obviously, but just to show you that this field of psychobiotics used to be only Cerebiome, and now there's more and more and more that are coming out, which is great. Here's some other ones. These are European strains that you can find a lot of European products. This is one that I'm formulating with now. It's called Bifazin. This is a blend of 4 different strains. It helps with cognitive decline. It's an antioxidant. It helps with memory. It helps protect and reinforce membrane integrity, both in the gut, so less leaky gut, better gut integrity, and blood-brain barrier. So both of those membrane integrities are improved. I'll talk more about bifidin in just a little bit. And then this one's pretty cool. This is one that I'm actually going to use in an upcoming product for sleep because this strain is a bacteria strain that helps your body make more GABA. And GABA is the body's primary relaxing neurotransmitter. So if you supplement with a bacteria that can help your body make more GABA, that can help you wind down and relax and de-stress and fall asleep faster. So that might not be appropriate in like a daytime product because you're getting, more GABA than you need. It might make you sleepy during the day, but that absolutely is going to be something that you would want at night, especially if you're one of those people who has trouble falling asleep. All those different ones, they all fall in this category of psychobiotic, but they're for sort of different benefits, right? Cerebiome might be more for people with depression and anxiety, whereas bifidin might be more for people with stress, and the GABA probiotic from this company, Verb, might be more for people who have trouble falling asleep, right? So all these different sets of benefits. That we can bring to bear on these different problems. So here's what they look like. So here's Cerebiome. It's a combination of these two, and I was right. It's Lactobacillus helveticus, Bifidobacterium longum. Here's the strain designations. 3 billion CFUs per day is what you need of this to match what was used in the clinical trials. Bifidin comes from this other company. This is an Italian company called Probiotical. Here are the 4 strains and the strain designations. That's 4 billion CFUs. CFU stands for colony forming units. There's another way to measure probiotic strength that's called AFUs. With Zenith, we measure it in CFUs, which are live bacteria, and we also measure it in AFUs, which stands for active fluorescent units, which just counts a little bit differently, but gets the live guys and the bad and the live bacteria and non-viable bacteria. So you get a more full count. So we count it both ways. And then GABA probiotic. Here's the strain designation LP815. That's 5 billion CFUs per day. So those are pretty low levels when you consider the fact that there are products out there that are 10 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion, 500 billion. I've seen products out there that are a trillion. You wouldn't want to take a product like that every single day. That's too much of an isolated, strain or an isolated couple of strains. But these are the levels that have been shown in the clinical trials to have the benefits that I just talked about. But sometimes people look at that and go, oh, 4 billion, that doesn't seem like a lot when these other products have 50 billion. Once you know the strain, you know the benefit. Once you know the strain, you know how many you need to take. Once you know the strain, like these guys, all of these guys, these are all resistant to stomach acid. So none of these would have to be protected from your stomach acid. They wouldn't have to be put inside of acid resistant capsules or anything like that. You could just put them in a powder and you could just eat it, and it would go right through your stomach acid without batting an eye, and it would get down to the colon and do what it needs to do there. So I just made this point, right? When we say that we can give a psychobiotic to help somebody feel better, in quotes, feel better, well, how are they feeling better? Are they feeling better because they have less of a disease like depression and anxiety? Do they feel better because their mood is elevated? Do they feel better because they're less stressed? Feel better because they're sleeping better? Feel better because they can handle stress better, which is what we call resilience? All of that depends on the strain, okay? Strain specificity. This is what the label looks like of my product, Zenith. So if you look at the supplement facts panel, you'll see this probiotic blend right here. And the reason I put this up is this is how you can decode your own labels. Whether you're looking at a Zenith or you're looking at some other product at the shelf, the next time you're there, or you go onto Amazon and you order your products from there. When you look at the probiotic part, you want to be able to see, okay, are they telling me how many are there? 4 billion CFU. Does that match with the clinical trial? And you can look up the clinical trials because you can type in the actual names of these bacteria and you can see what was done. You can see that here's Bifidin. That's the brand name of this blend of 4. And you can see, oh, okay, strain designation, strain designation, strain designation, strain designation. When you see a product that doesn't have a strain designation, you should put it down. You shouldn't choose that one because there are better products out there that do tell you the strain, and that gives you the information you need to understand all the other stuff. I won't talk about any of the other stuff because this is the prebiotic, this is the postbiotic, this is the phytobiotic, and we're going to talk about all those kinds of things in other sections. So this is kind of interesting. I'll just say one quick thing about this. This bifazin blend, one of the reasons I started formulating with it is that it's been around for a long time, um, in isolated bacterial form, if you will. So all of these different strains have had already been studied for different sets of benefits. So anti-pathogenic activity, so helping you get rid of bad bacteria, these strains do that. Anti-inflammatory and immune balancing, these strains would do that. Antioxidant properties for all the four strains. Production of GABA for this strain, this plantarum strain. Improved intestinal barrier function, so less leaky gut, all four strains. It was only in the last couple years where they studied all four of them together to show improvement in mood state, improvement in mood, improvement in sleep quality. And it sort of came from, it's like a progressive march of the science to say, well, wait a minute, we're getting rid of bad bacteria. That's a good thing. We're lowering inflammation. That's a good thing because usually if your inflammation is high, your depression is also high and your confusion is also high, or your ability to think and remember and focus. Your immune system is an important part of this gut-brain axis, and we're able to modulate that. Your barrier function, your production of GABA, like all these things sort of ladder up biochemically to, well, wait a minute. If we're solving all these pieces of biochemistry, I bet people are feeling better. So let's do some clinical trials around that. And they did a series of clinical trials showing all these psychological mood states. So now they could say, aha, any of these individually might be able to do that, but collectively, when we put them all together, we're able to document that, and we're able to like corroborate that in a clinical trial. Okay, so that's that. Um, and then same thing. Okay. So I'm going to say something about this, and then I'm going to give you your checklist on the next slide. And let me look in the chat real quick. So it says at the 125 milligrams of L-theanine in Zenith, will it be noticeably different if we stop taking Zenith, almost like a withdrawal effect, or no? Yeah, that's a really good question. So theanine is one of these things where the therapeutic dose of theanine is kind of like, what are you trying to get from it? So theanine is a relaxing amino acid. If you take theanine, it's going to help your brain produce more GABA. So you're going to have a relaxation effect. But what level of relaxation are you looking for? If you took a low dose, like 50 to 100 milligrams, and you're stressed, that's going to take your stressful brain waves, what we call beta waves, and shift them into alpha waves, which are associated with what we call relaxed alertness, right? Like being in the zone. You're calm, but you're focused. Okay. That's what you would want in the daytime. So 50 to 100 milligrams is going to do that. If you took more like 200 milligrams, that's going to really relax you. You're going to have a lot of GABA production. It's going to really sort of like have a very noticeable de-stressing effect. That would be more like what you would see with the GABA probiotic, right? This greater production of GABA that's going to have this more pronounced relaxation effect. It wouldn't necessarily put you to sleep, but it would allow you to fall asleep if that's what you're trying to do. So, um, so the dosage makes a big difference. The cool thing about theanine is that you don't develop a tolerance to it. So you get the onset of action, like it starts working in about 30 to 60 minutes, so it works pretty quickly, but it's pretty well gone in about 4 hours. So it can help you de-stress now, but and fall asleep now if you're taking that higher dose, but it's not going to have this persistent effect. And because of that, if you don't take it the next day for whatever reason, because you're not stressed or you're able to fall asleep fine, then you're not going to get that effect. So it's one of these, like, it's acutely active, rapid onset of action, but it is also metabolized pretty quickly out of your body, so you don't develop any tolerances to it. Okay, so there's no sort of rebound effect like that. Okay, so there's that. So we're talking about probiotics tonight. So these live microorganisms that confer a health benefit on the host when administered in adequate amounts. And I think we unpacked all of that. And we're going to talk about all these other biotics in subsequent sessions. So how do you choose the probiotic product that's right for you? When you go on Amazon, when you go on, I use a dispensary called Full Script, and a lot of my coaches do too, that has like practitioner levels of different products. When you go on and you're looking for a particular probiotic, what do you ask yourself? Well, the very first one, I've already said this, and I'm going to say it again for emphasis. What benefits are you looking for? You're not looking for a probiotic, right? Let's be honest. Like that, like nobody should wake up in the morning and say, "I need to get a probiotic today." You should think the other way. What's the end result that you want? I want something to help me focus better. I want something to help me with my mood. I want something to help me with my digestion. I want something to help me with my immune system. All the things that we talked about tonight, I guarantee you there is a probiotic strain that will deliver whatever benefit you're looking for. There's a probiotic strain for that. And so you can find that. Like I could open up a window right now, a browser window, and type in probiotics, validated probiotic strains for fill in the blank, whatever benefit you're looking for, and you would get a list. With all the AI search engines now, you would get a list of strain specific probiotics that do that benefit. And you could check out the clinical trial if you wanted to. You probably could click over to a particular product. You could take that strain designation and put it into another search, and you could find the products that, like the finished products that have that strain, and then you can go and buy that strain. Um, so that's the second part of it. Can a probiotic actually deliver this benefit? What's the science and what's the evidence for that? And that's pretty easy to figure out. Once you have the strain that delivers those benefits, like I said just a few minutes ago, that's also going to tell you how many you need to take. Is it 3 billion or 5 billion or 20 billion or what? It's going to tell you the storage. Does it have to be refrigerated or not? A lot of these really good psychobiotic strains are stable at room temperature. They survive stomach acid. They're very heat tolerant, so the, Arizona in August UPS truck is going to be perfectly fine. Where they probably fall down a little bit is that you couldn't make tea with them, right? You couldn't pour boiling water on them because that would kill the bacteria. You probably couldn't put them in your chocolate chip cookie recipe because cooking them at 350 degrees would kill them, right? But they have good viability within sort of normal parameters. It'll tell you what the shelf life is. It'll tell you all that kind of stuff, which is great. Which dose of the strain do you need? 3 billion, 5 billion, what I just said a second ago. Over what time frame? Is this something where most probiotics are going to be a little longer onset of action, right? Because if we're eating a bacteria that we want to change the ecology of your gut, that might take some time, right? Think of it like growing a garden. If you were to go out right now with your handful of sunflower seeds and throw them on the dirt, um, and go to bed and wake up the next morning and go out, are there going to be sunflowers? No, it's going to be a bunch of seeds sitting on the soil. You have to tend that a little bit, right? It's just like a garden. You have to give it the right nourishment, the right light, the right moisture, the right food. That's where we talk about the phytobiotics and the prebiotics and things like that. You have to tend it a little bit, right? They're not going to come overnight. It might be a month. It might be 2 months. It might be 3 months, depending on what sort of a benefit you're looking for. Some of the metabolic strains that are out there that can help with appetite and belly fat and blood sugar. So some of those are 4 weeks, some of those are 12 weeks. The psychobiotic strains are usually around 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. So a little bit sooner. The phytobiotics that we're going to talk about later, like theanine, that might be an hour. So like different onset of action depending on what kind of biotic you're picking. And then a really interesting question, should you combine them with other biotics? Should you combine the probiotic with a prebiotic or a postbiotic or a phytobiotic? And again, it comes back to what is the benefit that you're looking for. Don't just do it because you think it's going to make it better, but do it strategically. Like that's why my Zenith is all the biotics, because what that product is trying to do is help people with resilience, which is to help them handle stress better. And you can do some of that with probiotics, but you can do some of it with these other biotics too on different time courses, like what I call phased benefits, which we'll talk about next time. So just want to remind you some of the places you can go to find more information about all this kind of stuff. If you want to find more about our courses, you can, all of this stuff, you can go to Three Waves Wellness. You can find out about our courses, find out about our retreats. You can find out about our products. You can find out about our no nonsense affiliate program, which is really, really simple. And with that, I'm going to go here to my little thank you mouse, and I'm going to look one more time in the chat and just see if there's anything. Does Zenith cover the majority of all the good things we want to feel overall? Yeah, well, kind of. Like that's the promise of Zenith, right? On the front of it, we say gut-brain resilience for everyday excellence, right? That is resilience. And so part of resilience is being able to handle stress better. But each of those biotics, there's biotics in there to help you with relaxed alertness. There's biotics to help you with focus and motivation. There's biotics in there to help you with handling stress better. There are biotics that help you with metabolism. So leaky gut, belly fat loss, cholesterol and carbohydrate metabolism, like all that kind of stuff. It's sort of an all-in-one kind of a product for your mood state. That's the idea. But I'll say this, right? If somebody is looking for a biotic to help their constipation, that's not this. If they're looking for a biotic to help their some other benefit like their cardiovascular system, that's not this, right? There are other biotics out there for that. This one is purpose built for stress resilience. Okay. Um, and will my products be available on full script? Eventually, yes. Right now, the only way to get my products is to go through Three Waves. And that's kind of by design right now. When we were at the Sports and Active Nutrition Summit, Vitamin Shop, we were voted as a startup star, like, startup of the year, basically. And so Vitamin Shop came over to us, a GNC came over to us, a bunch of health grocers came over to us. It was in California, and there's a lot of those kinds of healthy grocery stores out there, all saying hey, we'd love to carry your product and things like that. And that's great. I'm not like anti-distribution or anti-mainstream consumer products or anything like that. But in order to do that, would have to increase the price, or there's all sorts of pros and cons. So I think at this point, we're having a great time just selling the product directly to people. We're having a great time with our affiliates. We've got like several hundred affiliates that have signed up to use the product themselves, and then represent it to their clients and their networks and things like that. And so that's good for us right now. We're not trying to build some, billion-dollar probiotic company. We're just trying to help as many people as we can with, improving their mental fitness. So, but thanks a lot for asking that. And let me see. And thanks for the reminder. I need to plant my sunflowers next week. So maybe we'll end it on that. I really appreciate you guys joining me tonight. I'm going to stop the share so I can wave at you. And hopefully you'll join me for the prebiotic seminar next week. Okay. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.